I'm Lillian Gray, South African fine artist, and today I'm going to show you how to start an acrylic painting. Alright, I'm going to cover some basics just with setting up your station. So it's really important that you set up a station where you are comfortable. I am painting on an easel. I've got a nice table easel. I am not working flat. Flat causes a lot of issues in drawing in proportion because your eye first sees this side, then, and when you tilt it up, everything is out of proportion. So it's important to work on an easel. You can even make a really cheap easel out of a cardboard box. Maybe we'll do a video on that. The next thing that I'm doing is that I'm keeping whatever I am painting eye level and parallel, alright? You do not want to look like you're getting your driver's license by having your reference on the table and you keep going up, down, up, down, up, down, trying to figure out what you need to draw, okay? You need to have a backing board. So I've got a board. If my canvas is portrait, my backing board is horizontal. If I'm painting landscape, my backing board is vertical. The reason is I want it to protrude and stick out on the side so that I can clip my reference on with my bull clip. If you are left-handed, your reference will be on the right-hand side. If you are right-handed, your reference will be on the left-hand side. The reason is when I am painting and my reference is behind my dominant hand, I can't see properly. So it's really important to make yourself as comfortable as possible when you paint. Just a note to self, if you do not respect your art, nobody else is going to respect your art. You need to treat your art with dignity. And you need to treat your space in which you're creating. I don't care where you're doing it, in the broom closet, but set up a proper little mini studio for yourself. Because that's going to make people realize, wow, you're serious about your art. Very important to put on an apron when you're working with acrylic paint. Acrylic paint does not wash out of your clothes. I've had a lot of panicked, stricken mothers calling me, asking how to get it out of a school uniform. It does not wash out. Very important to look professional with your apron is you want to tie your apron in the front. The reason is afterwards when you've got paint on your hands, you do not want to fiddle at the back and get paint on your clothing. You want to use your dirty hands on the front where it is protected by the apron. Okay, so now just simple brush care. Never, ever, ever leave your brushes in the water like this. There's quite a few things that happen. First of all, your enamel of your brush starts cracking and it starts breaking. And once this peels off, there's just the normal wood exposed and then they start swelling and then this thing's going to fall off. That's the first thing that's going to happen. Your next big thing that happens is by leaving it in the bowl, the tips of the brushes squish, because you've got all the pressure on them and they start bending and they start looking nasty like Rastafarians that never brush their hair, and you can't paint with that. So it's very important after you've used the brush, you wash it lightly by moving and pushing the pigment out. When it's dry, you shake it off and you wipe. Then you put the brush down next to it and that's where your brush stays until you need it again. What's also important, when you guys are mixing paint, you'd like to keep it on the bristles. When I'm mixing too much paint and I'm doing this, as soon as my paint starts crawling up to the metal of my brush, it means the brush that you are using is too small or you're on too much of a rush. This is a speeding ticket. You guys need to slow down. You want to keep your pigment off the metal of your brush. You want to only keep it on the front in the bristles. Okay, so I have a variety of brushes. A question I get asked a lot is when do I use which brush? A simple principle is if you're painting a big area, you use a big brush. If you're painting a small area, you use a small brush. Big brush, big area, small brush, small area. And that's just the basic principle to stick to. So with most of your painting, I'd almost say 75 of your painting, you're just working with your big one until you really get to your detail. Then you start switching to all your finer detailed ones. Then I also get asked a lot, where do I hold my brush? When I want little control, I'm at the back of my brush when I'm just color blocking. As soon as I start doing detail or a more controlled line, I'm holding my brush in the front, exactly there where the metal starts, and I'm holding my brush like a pencil. You don't want to go onto your metal, and you don't want to go too far away from your metal when you try and do detail. So this is really where I grip it when I'm starting to do detail or a very controlled line. We are now going to start by drawing our picture onto our canvas. I draw using the principle of universal shapes. I have a video about that if you guys want to go watch that. I'll put the link below. So we are going to simplify quite this complicated gorilla. Okay. So we are going to simplify this into basic shapes. So just note to self, do not draw a tiny little gorilla sitting here. Okay, that is not the idea. You want to actually use your entire canvas space and keep it nice and big. It's much more fun painting big. I really love working on huge canvases than sitting here and fiddling on the side and having all this empty space. So plan and place, composition, 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 plan, plan, plan. If you may need to make a little scamp before you start, then do that. Alright, I am going to simplify this into universal shapes. For my next step, I'm going to start by color blocking. With color blocking, you want to take the medium value, meaning the most dominant color of that area. My background is quite pink, so I am going to be mixing a dark pink that I like, and it almost has a purple base, so I'm adding a bit of blue. And before I take my color to the canvas, before I do that, I am going to match my color. Let me show you. You're going to hold your brush next to your reference. If that is the color you wanted, you can now commit and go and paint. You can now paint on your canvas. Alright, so I'm going to be color blocking my background quite pink. I'm going to be color blocking the hand quite gray. My face I'm going to do quite yellow, and then I'll start adding all the other stuff. So how do you know that you're done color blocking? It's when you can literally see no more white canvas. You want to get rid of your white canvas as soon as possible. The whole idea, there's an entire theory behind that, and I'm not going to go into all of that right now. But you want to color block as soon as possible and get rid of the white. Otherwise your eye will mix your colors wrong. That's what it kind of boils down to. But okay, now, why did I make his face yellow? The reason is you'd like to keep your yellows clean. So if I see an area that predominantly uses yellow, I usually block that in yellow because it's very hard to get a nice and clean yellow back on the canvas after you've used a lot of dark colors. So I like to first put the yellow and then work in the little darks more carefully. So it's much easier to take away some yellow than to add yellow, especially with your bright colors. When you guys are mixing, a nice pro tip is to keep your warm colors away from your cold colors because that really causes mud. So try and mix far away from each other so your colors remain nice and clean. Okay, so before you start to really get into this, I just want to tell you it's super important to keep your colors clean. We do not want muddy colors. We do not want to be a Land Rover stuck in the mud in Botswana. We want to keep away from a marsh and keep it nice and clean and crisp. The way I do that is I keep my water clean. I change it quite often. If you are lazy like me and you don't want to walk to the sink all the time, I have 2 buckets next to me, and I usually use one for my cold colors and one for my warm colors. It stays much cleaner for longer. Another thing that I do is, say for instance, if I'm painting and my brush starts picking up a color it wasn't supposed to have, I immediately take my apron and brush off the dirty color and keep on painting. Keep your brush clean, keep your colors clean. Another question I get asked a lot is, Lillian, where should I start? Now, the rule of thumb is to start at your background and move your way forward. So always start with your background and then proceed. Another thing to do is start with your darks and move to your lights. So I'm going to start with my darkest areas, build my mid-tones, and then do all my little highlights. That is another rule to adhere to. What I also like to just tell you guys, it's very bad for your art when you zone in and paint one tiny little section until it's absolutely perfect, okay? The biggest reason for this is that it actually wastes a lot of time. Say for instance, you're painting somebody and you're painting all the jersey, every single knitting thread that you could see, and once you zoom out and you've done the face, you realize nobody ever looks at that area of your painting and you've wasted a whole lot of life hours on perfecting the knit. So the way I think about a painting is about a child. A child grows holistically, all right? And that's how your painting should grow. You don't want your child to grow one arm until it's 21, then one leg until it's 21, then its nose until it's 60, and have the child completely out of proportion. A painting is exactly the same way. It needs to age and grow holistically to avoid any dysfunctions. Show you how to do the drips in the background with a specific painting. So I am adding a lot of water to my paint and to really get it drippy, and I'm going to squeeze it at the top of my canvas to start making it run down. Asked, Lillian, how do I get such fine lines in my paintings? And there's 2 things. One, don't push hard, okay? You want to be on the tip of the paintbrush. It's like an ice skater gliding on the ice. It's not a big giant stomping around. You do not want to press hard on your brush. You want to glide and not push. And the next thing that I always do is I anchor my hand. What do I mean by that? I put my hand down, I stabilize it on my canvas, and then I have a lot more control than trying to do it from here. This is a very unstable situation. This is quite stable. If your painting's very, very wet, you can anchor with your pinky, just touch with your pinky, but give your hand stability, and you will be able to achieve a very, very fine line. Okay, now another method you could use is flicking. I like having really thin paint on my brush and then whacking it on a different brush. You can use different colors. Another thing that you used to do in primary school was to flick the bristles of your brush. This is quite bad for your brush because we don't want them to look like rastas. So I'd rather use a very old brush if you do plan on using that method. Oops, I made a mistake. Lillian, what should I do when I made a mistake? It's very simple. You can wipe it off with a paper towel, or you can leave it to dry. Once it's dried completely, you can cover it up with paint and fix your mistakes. That's the wonderful thing about art. All hope is never lost. You can fix whatever nonsense you have caused. It just takes a little bit more time. So my trick is also be extremely accurate with your pencil drawing. So the drawing is really the foundation of your artwork. If your drawing is correct, your painting will be correct. Okay, so how do you know that you're done with your painting? There's really a few questions you can ask yourself. I usually look at it and I apply the 7 elements of art. Does it have depth? Do I have good line quality? Do I have nice shapes and form? Is my tonal value, meaning is there a lot of brights and a lot of darks? Because that is really the drama in a painting. Usually when paintings look bland and not exciting at all is when the values are really flat. So you want to have bright brights and dark darks. Enter the drama. Da, 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 da. And then I always ask myself, is it neat? Is it worked off? Is the areas that I've color blocked nice and solid? Does it have interesting brush strokes, fat brush strokes, thin brush strokes, flicks, speed? Can you see the artist in the artwork? And then also consider the journey that your eye is taking through this painting. How would someone that sees this painting for the first time, where would they focus? How would their eye move? Is that quite interesting? Or does their eye just plonk out and it's a boring painting and they don't want to keep on looking? So is the gaze engaged in this painting? And then if you are a student at my school, for heaven's sake, write your name at the back. It is the most irritating thing as a teacher, not knowing which artwork belongs to who, name and surname. And if you're an adult and a practicing artist, remember to sign your work. I'm quite guilty where I've sold, I think, 2 or 3 paintings that I never actually signed, and I had to go all the way, drive back to these people's houses to go and sign it. So please make sure you add your $1 million signature. One day this might be worth millions. And then remember, if you are copying a reference, you can use photos that don't have copyright on them. There's some wonderful websites that has copyright-free images that you're allowed to paint and sell. If you are copying images that the copyright is still very much intact, you cannot sell those. Those are just exercises or practices. If you are copying an image and you change it more than 8 things, you need to change at least 8 aspects of that thing. It's considered a new, unique work in some laws of most countries. I know that's how it works in South Africa. But I hope you guys have lots of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you're much smarter at how to approach an acrylic painting, where to start, how to color block, how to add detail, and how to finish it off. And yeah, if you guys really want to, you can put a gloss sealer on this at the end, which just makes the colors even pop in even more. But that you can only do after it's 100% dry. But yeah, please remember to subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Lillian Gray, South African fine artist.